Hi, this is James Sakalis, developer of Spiral Somatics and big fan of Christopher Guest movies. And if you're not familiar with Christopher Guest, he's someone who is known for making mockumentaries. So this is films in the style of a documentary, but they're fake, they're not real, and they're funny. And the thing that makes Christopher Guest movies unique is that they're also all improvised. So there's no script. When actors come to make a Christopher Guest movie, what happens is they don't get a script. They get a detailed description of their character and the character's backgrounds. They get an overall kind of broad picture of the plot of the movie. And for any scene that they're in, they get kind of a rough indication of what's supposed to generally happen in this scene. But there's no script. And so when there's a scene in which a couple of characters are supposed to interact, the actors playing those characters are put in front of camera on set, and then the cameras just start rolling and they just riff, they ad-lib, they just make things up in the moment. And the result of this is that if you're someone with a certain sense of humor, Christopher Guest movies are just hilarious. You know, there's things that emerge, there are scenes that happen, there are lines that happen that you could not possibly anticipate, because they're the kinds of things that just happen when people are riffing off each other. And it's magic. You get these moments of magic that are only possible when people just kind of improvise in the moment. Because that's one of the things that can happen when people improvise in the moment. You get these moments of magic. It's one of the things that can happen, but it doesn't always happen. And so I had to pause to think about how I was going to respond to a question that was offered to me recently. I was in California to teach Spiral Somatics, where I'd just been a few months previously also to teach Spiral Somatics. And there was an event, there was a dinner that I was attending. And at this dinner, also in attendance, were some of the participants from the course, my host for this particular event, but also a young man who I'd never previously met before, but who had heard all about me. He'd had his colleagues rave about me who'd been on the previous training. His colleagues had raved about me as a trainer, and so he came and he wanted to kind of pick my brains a little bit. And so during the dinner, he took the opportunity to ask a bunch of trainer questions, let's say, presumably in an effort to do what he might describe as modeling. And I had some idea of where he was likely at, because in the previous course, I'd met a whole bunch of people from the same school of NLP and had a pretty good sense of their strengths, their weaknesses, what they knew about, what they didn't know about, what they could do well, what they couldn't do quite so well, this kind of thing. So I had a pretty good sense of where this guy was at, and I knew that this guy was really keen, really enthusiastic, and was literally just starting a career as someone running NLP seminars. And so he asked me a bunch of questions, and one of the questions that he asked was this. He asked me, when you're training, do you plan things out meticulously? Like, do you really kind of, design things out in detail, or do you just kind of trust your unconscious mind? And apart from the fact that it's an extremely binary question, right? It's an exclusive or, do you do this or do you do this? There are no other options. But apart from that, there's something inside that question that gave me cause to pause, let's say. So I gave him an answer, but I didn't give him the full answer. So my answer, if I recall, was it depends on time frames. If I'm going to be with a particular group of people and I'm only going to be with them for 20 minutes, I'm just doing a presentation, let's say, then everything is going to be meticulously planned out because I've got very short time frames and I don't have a lot of wiggle room. But if I'm doing something like a practitioner or master practitioner program, which given the way that I train means that's going to take place over several months, I've got a lot more scope, I've got a lot more ability to kind of flow and move things in slightly different directions. But what I didn't tell him was this, to use the metaphor of unconscious mind, because that's the metaphor that he used, to use the metaphor of unconscious mind, I didn't tell him that, yes, of course, I'm an NLP trainer, I adapt in the moment, and I do actually improvise quite a lot, and I trust my unconscious mind to support and guide me in that process of improvising. I didn't say that because I didn't want to give him an idea that's potentially misleading, because the reason that I trust my unconscious mind to do that is that my unconscious mind's got 20 years of experience. My unconscious mind has been through a process of extremely in-depth training. I did a 5-year full-time apprenticeship to become an NLP trainer. I didn't do a 10-day or a 15-day or a 20-day trainer's training, 5 years full time. I've explored things in quite a lot of depth. I've also trained with 30 plus different teachers from different schools of NLP with different styles and approaches who do things very differently, so I have a certain breadth of perception as well. And I've got 20 years of experience teaching this stuff in different conditions, in different circumstances, with different kinds of personalities and group dynamics and outcomes and all sorts of things. So my unconscious mind is loaded up. It knows what it's doing, let's say. And so that leads to a particular kind of situation. Because imagine, right? Imagine that you went to some kind of music venue, a live music venue, and some kind of club, let's say. And at this club, there's a band. And the band plays, but they also encourage anyone who's a musician to come up on stage and jam with them. And imagine someone comes to this venue who's, let's say, a guitarist, who's been playing guitar for 20 years and who knows all sorts of different chord progressions and scales and rhythmic structures and can play rock and country and blues and jazz and classical guitar. Someone who's just an expert in playing guitar comes to this venue. They get up on stage, you put a guitar in their hand and just go, just play, just jam, just riff, just improvise. This person is going to be able to jam with this band and they're going to be able to improvise, and beautiful things are going to emerge from that. Magical moments can happen there because this is literally a moment that's never happened before. It's never going to happen again. And the conditions are perfect for magic to emerge in this scenario. But in contrast, imagine, if you will, same scenario, right? So same, live music venue, and you've got a band that invite people up to jam with them. Someone comes in who doesn't know how to play guitar, and you put that person on stage and you put a guitar in their hands and go, just improvise. It's not going to be the same. It's going to be crap. It's going to be absolute crap because this person just doesn't know what they're doing, and improvise is not good advice in situations like that. Even someone who was not completely new, but someone who was very kind of new to their journey, let's say, in learning guitar, who'd maybe memorized 5 or 6 of their favorite songs, who knew 5 or 6 different chords, so not totally new, but you put a guitar in the hands of someone like that, you get them on stage and get them to improvise, and again, it's just not going to be the same. It's not going to be as bad as someone who has never picked up a guitar before, but it's sure as hell not going to be even anywhere near the same league as someone who really knows what they're doing. And so this is the thing. Christopher Guest's movies they're not great because they're improvised. They're great because they're improvised by particular people. When Christopher Guest casts his movies, he doesn't just get random people in off the street and go put them in front of camera and tell them to improvise. He puts people there who know what they're doing, who are experts at this kind of thing, right? Who've done this 1,000 times and they know their shit. They know their shit inside out. And that's what allows for this kind of magic to emerge, as well as, of course, a certain degree of creativity and a certain aesthetic sense. But without that foundation, and this is what empty-handed NLP is about. This is about exploring things in such depth and developing the ability to be able to do things in a whole bunch of different ways so that you know this stuff inside out, backwards and forwards. You can do it blindfolded with one hand tied behind your back, and you have 5 or 6 ways of doing exactly the same kind of high-level process, let's say, because that's the kind of thing that will allow you, when you improvise, to improvise with much more consistently useful results, and to improvise in such a way that you create the conditions for moments of magic.